But the reality is when there's an ocean between you, there's not same day travel if an emergency happens. And there's not, easy ways to get back and forth between us. So that was definitely a big part of feeling guilty for making the decision to move abroad. Hi there, I'm Michelle Godlewski, an American girl who called the cornfields of Illinois home until over 10 years ago when I started navigating the chaos of life overseas. If you've ever felt that itch for something more, that whisper telling you to break free from the ordinary, you're in the right place. This podcast is your backstage pass to the wild ride of moving abroad. I'm here to pull back the curtain on the real journey, sharing stories that are funny, dramatic, and sometimes downright unbelievable. We'll explore the gritty details, from battling culture shock and navigating tricky visa processes to celebrating those small victories that make it all worth it. So whether you're daydreaming about a new life abroad or already in the thick of it, grab your passport and let's explore what it really means to live life beyond borders. Welcome to A Broadly Speaking. Hey, welcome back to A Broadly Speaking. I'm Estelle. So glad you're here. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you've been around for a bit, welcome back. And so glad that you decided to join us again. And this week's episode, I really want to focus on one thing that I think is probably the hardest part about living abroad and about making the decision to move abroad. And it's one of the worst words that I just despise. It's 5 letters. It starts with G. Anybody want to guess? And no, it's not guess. Yeah, it's that awful word called guilt. It just feels heavy even to say it. When we first thought about moving abroad, our families maybe weren't super excited. I know my sisters-in-law were excited for us. They were excited about the concept of coming to visit and the possibility of spending time with us. So certainly, like, people in general were excited, but there was also this giant ball of apprehension and fear that kind of came along with it at the same time. Specifically, I know there was the idea that we wouldn't be around as often. Now, by the time that we moved abroad, we were already living pretty far away from family. My parents were in Northern Illinois and my husband's parents were in Florida, and we decided to move abroad. We were living in North Carolina. We had moved to Mississippi at one point, and we lived in North Carolina for a while. So they were not unused to us living far away. But at least if something happened, we could be in the same country. We could be with each other within, a day or so at worst, right? So it wasn't quite so scary. But the reality is when there's an ocean between you, there's not same day travel if an emergency happens. And there's not, easy ways to get back and forth between us. So that was definitely a big part of feeling guilty for making the decision to move abroad. And then when we had our daughter, we were living in Switzerland at the time already for a couple of years when we found out that we were pregnant and we ended up having our daughter in Switzerland. Oh my goodness, the guilt associated with that. Like, my daughter wouldn't know her grandparents. And then how are we going to spend time with family? And how are we going to be able to do all these things? Just the overwhelming amount of guilt was huge. And even to this day, I still struggle with it sometimes. And truth be told, there are days when I'm like, oh my goodness, so guilty for being far away. I'll tell you a quick story. This was, I don't know, a year or so ago. It might have been as much as 2 years ago. My mom and dad and some of my family go on vacation every year together to go fishing. And we go to the same fishing spot. They've been going since I was 11. So it's been a long time. And my mom is not the most graceful of people. She tends to be clumsy sometimes. I love her and I'm the same. But she was walking around and ended up tripping on a step and fell and ended up literally breaking her face. Like, no joke, she broke her face. I didn't know that was possible, but congratulations, Mom. That's what she did. So we have a standing date with my parents every Wednesday where we have dinner here and they're having lunch. And so we share a meal together on FaceTime and my daughter participates and it's super fun. Whole nother episode coming on that. But we enjoy it. And on that particular day, my mom is on the camera and she's got this big bandage on her face and a black eye. And I'm like, what in the world just happened to you? And my mom said, "Well, I fell," and, told me the whole story of what happened, and all I could think about was, I should have been there, and, oh my gosh, I could have helped, and how hard this was for her, and the guilt that is associated with that kind of feeling is enormous. Like, my parents are aging. Unfortunately, we don't age in reverse, right? We get older, we don't get younger, and my parents are aging, and I know there will come a time when they're not here anymore, and while I dread that moment, I also feel extremely guilty about it because we haven't been able to spend as much time as if we lived next door. And the guilt that I carry with me for that is a lot. And then I remind myself my parents did exactly the same thing with us, with my grandparents, and we still had a great relationship with my grandparents. And that was pre like electronic communication. That was pre Skype, pre FaceTime. I'm old enough that I'm pre Google, right? I'm pre internet age. So it's not something that I take lightly and just kind of poo poo, but I also realize that my parents have an understanding there that we were far away always from my grandparents as well. And we still had a great relationship with them. And I don't think that they begrudge me living the best life that is for my daughter and my husband, myself, and our little world and family. But there's definitely a place of guilt that I carry with me everywhere for being so far away, for having situations happen. My mother-in-law a few years ago broke her hip, and my husband had to decided he didn't have to. He decided to get on a plane and go spend a couple of weeks with his mom as she healed up. And that was perfect. And it was the right thing. But then he also felt guilty because it was Christmas time. And so he missed Christmas with my daughter and I yeah, basically missed Christmas with my daughter and I because he had flown over to be with her, which was absolutely the right thing for him to do and was absolutely the thing we should be doing in that situation. And I think that's really important, right? I think that we need to understand that some things are going to happen and you can't stop life for life, right? You can't stop living your life because something might happen in another life. Even if we live next door to my mother in law or we live down the street from my parents or whatever, it's not like we would see them every single day. And I would argue that my brother actually sees my parents less often, my brother's kids, I should say, as a whole, see my parents less often than my daughter does. And his kids lives 20 minutes from my parents. It's because we prioritize making time with my parents. We prioritize those weekly, family dinners that we have on Skype or on FaceTime specifically. So the guilt that we take with us is a choice that we have to make. And is it the right choice for you? Only you can decide that. For me, some of the ways I deal with the guilt is specifically spending time and making sure I have a scheduled time that I spend with my parents and we prioritize that. Certainly things come up and we don't spend every single Wednesday together, but we do try to spend time together. I actually set up an email address for my daughter that my mom sends emails to every week. Now, my daughter's only 7 today, but I've had it since she was 3. So Alma's been sending her messages for the longest time. Anytime my mom comes to visit, she'll send a recap email about what she did with her and her favorite parts and things. That's been a huge add too, because as my daughter gets older, she'll be able to look back on Alma's memories with her, even if Alma can't be there to tell her about those memories herself. We also prioritize time together. My daughter has several school breaks throughout the year. They're 2 weeks long. She goes to a year-round school, so they break up the school differently. And she has 2 weeks usually around Easter time, 6 weeks over the summer, 2 weeks in October, 2 weeks in December, and 2 weeks in February. So my parents usually come one of those breaks, one of those 2 weeks or 6-week breaks, and spend several weeks with us, staying in our house with us, partially to be able to watch our daughter, which is super helpful, but also partially to be able to spend time with her and really have concentrated time and make memories with her. We go back to the US occasionally as well. There's been a few times where we've gone to visit family in different states, depending on who we're visiting. Usually, we'll tell people we're going to be in this particular state if you want to come visit us. So, my parents will tend to come and stay with us or come and be near us while we're visiting someone in the States. This summer, my daughter and I spent 10 days with my parents in the US, which was amazing. My daughter got to have some awesome adventures with my extended family as well, which was really, really cool. Shout out to my uncle taking her onto a boat and letting her drive. It was super awesome. She still talks about it 3 months later, but it was such a great experience. And so I recognize that while she doesn't have day to day necessarily interactions with her grandparents or with my extended family, she does get all of the experience of life that I would hope for her. And ultimately, that relieves a lot of the guilt because when you can know that the experience that your children are getting or that you're getting add this much value to your existence or to your process or to you as a family, it makes it all worth it. And knowing that even if you live next door, even if you are down the road, doesn't necessarily mean that you would prioritize them the same way you do because you live abroad. Carrying that guilt around is part of it, and having to deal with that guilt. I grew up Catholic, and so there's this a joke about Catholic guilt. Dude, I got all of it. All the Catholic guilt. And it's a choice that I'm making, and I recognize that that choice gives me freedom to do things that I wouldn't have the opportunity to do otherwise. So, yes, it's sometimes a challenge when bad things inevitably happen or when things inevitably go wrong. And the guilt is something that I'll always probably carry with me. And I choose to carry it. And I choose to let it not stop me from doing the thing that I know is the right thing for me and my family. So while the guilt is inherently there, it's always going to be there. Making a choice and prioritizing the family at home, prioritizing the people that matter to you is a great way to kind of carry that guilt a little lighter and recognize that today makes living abroad so much easier. When I was a kid and living in Germany, we literally never talked to my grandmother for months at a time because it was so expensive to call. So when we would call for like 20 minutes, was every probably 6 months, I think. I don't remember exactly, but it was a long time in between. We would talk to them for a maximum of 20 minutes and then we would hang up and that would be it. We would send letters back and forth. I'm talking snail mail letters. So there wasn't electronics in the way that there is now. So there was no way for us to be able to have a conversation live and in person or live with one another on FaceTime or on Skype, right? It wasn't until I was past college we were in university when Skype came about. And that really changed the game a lot in the ability to live abroad and to still allow your children to interact or allow you to interact with your family, even though they live far away. So while there's 4,000 plus miles between us, while there's, I don't know, kilometers, I think it's like 6,000 kilometers or so between us, it doesn't mean that we can't be part of each other's daily lives. And it doesn't mean that we can't be included in conversations and included in part of the family. We have family group chats that we chat with. And so text messaging back and forth together. We get videos of my nieces and nephews. We get family pictures and things done. So we're still included. Even though we live so far away, we're still part of the family. And we can choose how that makes us be together. And we can choose how that makes us manage the guilt overall. Are there days when the guilt becomes really heavy and I feel really bad? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie and tell you that the guilt suddenly goes away. I've been away 10 plus years and I still feel guilty sometimes. But that doesn't stop me from living the life that I know is right for us and I know is right for my little family here in Switzerland. And ultimately, it's been a benefit to my family in the US too. So I know it's not easy. I know it's heavy. I know Catholic guilt is real. Mom guilt is real. All the guilt is super real, right? We all feel it. And we get to choose how we utilize that and how much are we willing to adapt and live our lives if guilt rules it versus if we take control and decide what we allow guilt to rule in our lives. So, just a little food for thought on this one. Thank you for hanging out with me on a Broadly Speaking. I look forward to chatting with you again next week. See you soon. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to A Broadly Speaking. If today's episode got you dreaming a little bigger or thinking a little braver, go ahead and hit subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's ready for their own adventure. And hey, don't be a stranger. Come hang out with me over on Instagram at @IamEstelle for the real, unfiltered life abroad. Keep that passport handy, and remember, life's too short to stay in one place.